Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie Dunn, and I am the Program Director here at Cancer Support Community on the Central Coast. I'm really happy to be bringing this presentation to you live via Facebook. Um, Different times would allow us to bring in participants and their loved ones into our office space, but for now, this will have to do. We're very fortunate to have our speaker today. Keep in mind, too, we have education still once a month coming to you. We will be virtual in September and October. In September, we're going to welcome Dr. DiCarlo back for a precision medicine talk. And then in October, we're going to talk about making treatment decisions. And that's going to be done by our own Lindsay Levinson, who's a licensed marriage and family therapist, talking about the subtleties and the questions that are great to ask when considering all of your treatment options. So stay tuned and please look at our calendar or our website for the details of those upcoming educations and join us live as always. As far as today's program, what I would love for those of you that are watching live to be able to do is send in your questions, whether that's on a comment or a private message, and I will make sure that Kris gets to attend to those questions either at the end or maybe during in a way that you feel comfortable. So if you want to send those in anonymously, I won't mention any names. I know this topic can be sensitive at times, but we want you to be frank and open and use this time to really learn something great. So without delaying any further, I'm going to introduce our speaker, Kris Roudebush. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist, and we're so lucky to have her.
Hello, good evening. I'm Kris Roudebush. Like Jamie said, I'm a marriage and family therapist. I have a private practice located in San Luis Obispo. I've been working with clients for the last, it's 2020, so 8 years or so. I specialize in working with survivors of sexual assault, intimate partner violence, and sex therapy. And a lot of people wonder, what is sex therapy? Sex therapy is a discipline in which you know more intimately the understanding and challenges related to sex and sexuality, related to sexual dysfunction, couples work, LGBT, kink community, the whole gamut, everything related to sex and sexuality. And so tonight I'm going to hopefully present to you some options and ideas, things to consider as you explore the possibility of sex and intimacy through cancer. I want to acknowledge before we start that there may be a number of different types of folks watching today. So today you may be living with cancer, you may be in remission, you may be a partner, you may be a caregiver. And so I want to try and speak to all of those populations at once. And I also know that that's really hard to do. So I apologize in advance, and please ask questions like Jamie suggested throughout the presentation. I want to start by stating the fact that it is common and completely reasonable that interest or desire in sex is at the very bottom of your interest list right now. There's a chance that it's not there, and actually, frankly, you don't miss it. And that's okay, and I want to acknowledge that. For some of you, you may be missing it, or have partners that are missing it, and that you want to get creative and look at different solutions and ways to navigate given the circumstances. I'm not here to convince you that you need to go through this cancer journey and be your normal sexy self at the same time. That's unreasonable, and I'm not asking that of you. So with that, I want to get started. I also want to acknowledge we are going to be talking about sex tonight, and so if there are little ears or sensitive ears in the room, just note that I will be very explicit at times, talking about physical things and sexual things. So, what we're going to review tonight, I'm going to talk about the topics covered, and also acknowledge that there may be diversity, not just in where you are in your treatment or as a supportive partner, but also that that you may be cisgendered, you may be transgender, you also may be partnered with male or female or non-monogamous partners. And so sometimes I will refer to people with vaginas and people with penises. I may say man, I say woman, which I realize is really cisgendered. central, but I apologize for that. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to use those terms. So the ways that we're going to review cancer may impact sex and intimacy is physically, emotionally, and psychologically, with partners and in dating. And then I also kind of want to put forth the creation of new opportunities. I'll get to that later on. And then ultimately, I want to provide you with some more resources for ongoing education and support. So if you want to do some more reading, if you want to connect with a network of folks, I'm going to provide some resources at the end of my presentation on this topic. So, why do I like to talk about sex? I like to talk about sex for one major reason. Sexuality is a normal and important aspect of health. It is fairly taboo, even in 2020, to openly talk about sex and sexual needs, which I feel is a bummer. And so I find it really important in my practice, and more or less with anyone I run into, to be able to have really open and caring conversations about sex and intimacy, because it is such a big part of our lives for many of us, not all of us. So starting by defining what is sex and what is sexuality. Sex is a physical act and a biological term. It's hopefully a pleasurable experience. Whereas sexuality is much more broad and diverse. It includes sexual feelings, thoughts, attractions, and behaviors. Consider this. Your doctors that you are working with, or that your partner is working with, are very focused on tackling your cancer. That's their main focus. That is their training. And most doctors receive no training in sexuality and may not be able to answer the questions that you have, except for from a medical standpoint. So unfortunately, what this means is that they will likely not talk about it unless your cancer is related to a sexual organ. And it's going to be up to you to advocate or to ask those questions in those circumstances. So I'm going to pause quickly and see if there's any questions so far, or if there's anybody that relates to this sentiment. If you do relate to the sentiment, maybe give a thumbs up, because this is unfortunately fairly common. Okay. So I also bring up sexuality as a normal and important aspect of health, because I want to, again, normalize the fact that you bringing it up to your doctor is reasonable. It is not fluff. It is not something that is not important. And I know that having those conversations may be very awkward if you've never talked about sex with a physician or really anybody outside of intimate partners. But I would really advocate for having those questions if it's something that you would like to explore, or you're having challenges with it. So, as we look at physical challenges, there is a whole host of ways that cancer may affect you physically. And before we even launch into elements of physical changes and what is happening with your body that may influence your desire or interest in any type of intimacy, I want to talk about loss, because cancer can be a series of loss in your time, loss in your feelings of health, loss in your relationship with your body, and then loss of functionality, or actually physical loss of parts of your body. And so as we go through the physical changes that may take place, recognize that loss is almost always overshadowing this, and that we live under the assumption that our bodies behave a certain way, and we somewhat expect that they will continue to work that way. And then when they stop doing that, and then sometimes when the treatment is very painful and not enjoyable, it feels like our bodies are working against us, or it feels like there's something wrong with us. And so that's going to affect on both the physical and the emotional and psychological level. So the first way that I wanted to cover was changes in energy and simply feeling ill. Medications and treatment side effects. So a number of different medications, and for some of you, I know I'm probably preaching to the choir. You know that the different medications affect in different ways. And doctors may not talk about how the medications may affect your sex life. This often, again, is going to be more common for women, that doctors may omit that, where they may express side effects, sexual side effects to men, but not women. And some of the ones that you may be more familiar with include fatigue and nausea, which last time I checked, not very sexy, not very alluring to get me in the mood or to make me want to feel intimate with a partner. But then there's other ones that aren't talked about. A common side effect can be vaginal dryness, which is, if you've never experienced, can seem like, again, something is wrong with your body. But given the right types of lubricant and patience and time, is definitely something that you can work through again and find solutions for. I'm going to back up and pause because there's one thing I haven't talked about, and that's communication. And I'm going to have to say it over and over and over in my presentation. But communication is huge. Knowing that, okay, I'm experiencing vaginal dryness, and maybe that's a surprise, and communicating with that partner, and communicating and sometimes educating, unfortunately, partners about what your needs are. It's not unfortunate that you're communicating your needs. It's unfortunate that there are surprises that come up sometimes. But the ability to communicate your need to your partner is going to lead to a more positive and connected sexual experience. So through all of this is going to be the lens of communication. And we'll talk about partners in a little bit. So yes, vaginal dryness is a fairly common side effect for many different medications and treatment options. Pain during penetration is also common for women or people with vaginas that they experience. That is also something that can be worked through patiently with your partner using dilators. I would highly suggest coupling with an OBGYN, a sex therapist, and a physical therapist or OT therapist that's knows a whole bunch about pelvic floor. But pain and penetration, again, it's one of those side effects that you don't expect and can be very surprising and shocking if up to that point you've had a very successful and fun sex life with your partner. For those with penises, challenges obtaining and maintaining erections can certainly be a challenge, and I want to kind of nix the belief that you have to have an erection and penetration to have sex and intimacy. That's not the case. So it may be the way that you envision sex would look like, but a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is going to be re-envisioning what sex might look like and what intimacy might look like. Some of the things that you used to do, you may still be able to do again, or you may eventually be able to get to, and some things you might not. And again, going back to the layer of loss. And so working through the loss and also finding opportunity for creativity and exploration and new options in your life. And there are lots of options out there. I want to assure you that there are lots of ways that you can feel sexy and connected with your partner or with future partners. So yes, challenges obtaining and maintaining erections. Sometimes there are medications out there that can help that, and sometimes there are not, depending on it. And again, going back to my previous statement, your drive may be gone. Any of these reasons that I talked about can remove that interest in intimacy and sex. Finally, another medication side effect that comes from chemo and radiation can be different sensations and texture of skin. So the way that touch feels on your skin has changed, and that may influence how and to what extent you enjoy or no longer enjoy being touched in certain ways. And yes, that can affect your ability to be interested in the way that intimate interactions happen between you and a partner. So, some other things to consider are surgery and recovery from those surgeries. Again, men and women can also be misinformed by doctors on the ramifications of the surgery on their sex life. The ones that come more prominently to mind involve hysterectomies, prostate removal, mastectomies, and then the introduction of ostomy bags. These are things that perhaps you could talk in great detail about ostomy bags and how to clean them and how to remove them and how to care for them, but conversation might not be had about how do you initiate sex with an ostomy bag and how do you answer questions to a sexual partner. And so these are physical aspects that are going to change the way that intimacy happens. Going back to hysterectomy, that your doctor may tell you, okay, you have to wait X amount of time before having any penetrative sex. But it's not going to tell you, are you going to be able to self-lubricate? Or are you going to have vaginal dryness? What things can you do or can't you do? And then also, layered on top of this, and layered on top of all of this, is the emotional level, right? Which is, do you now fear that part of your body? Are you afraid that you might hurt something? Are you afraid that things might get damaged? And so maybe penetration feels really scary and you just want to avoid that part of your body. I just want to normalize that many of these things could possibly be true for you. So prostate removal has a major effect on sex and sex lives. A number of the books that I'll post at the end are specifically related to prostate cancer. But the removal of a prostate means the inability to ejaculate externally and the loss of an erection. However, and I need to stress this very much so, that you can still have an orgasm, and in fact, the intensity of that orgasm goes up for the majority of men. And some folks might say, what do you mean? You can have an orgasm with a flaccid penis? Absolutely, yes. And when it comes to working with partners, perhaps you're not able to get an erection, but you want to please a female or male partner. There are a myriad of toys and options in order to pleasure partners, even if your penis is not working the way that you expect it to work. There are strap-ons, there are dildos, I could go on, but there are lots of ways that you can navigate that situation. And again, what's the word? Communication. So having conversations with your partner. Toys may be foreign to your bedroom, and so introducing a toy to the bedroom may be a kind of a big deal. And so being able to talk about that with a partner, engaging their interest or comfort level, something you might want to consider. Mastectomies. Breasts can be a large part of how we identify ourselves as women, and a big part of our sexuality. And for partners, it can be something that you've always enjoyed in your partner. And so having your or your partner's body change is going to potentially create some challenges in your ability to interact with that partner, or just not that it's discovering, and I hate to say this because it's 2020, but it's the new normal, right? That is overused this year, but it really is. And so there is, and with all of these things that we're talking about a little bit of a different body and the exploration of this new body. And so exploring what sensations feel like on a chest that doesn't look or feel like it did a couple months ago or before surgery. And with partners, it's navigating that with a partner. What sensations feel the same? What sensations feel different? Again, communicating and asking for permission as you're exploring this part of the body that has changed. And this is kind of a blanket statement, but then always getting clearance from your doctor. If you are unsure, you can, like, they may not know they may not be trained in sexuality. However, they should know, if I do this, is that going to hurt anything? Is it, how much recovery time post-surgery can I engage in X, Y, and Z, X? And it's also obviously going to be up to your level of comfort and when you are feeling ready. For partners, we'll get to partners in a minute, but getting the clearance from the doctor before you or your partner jump into the sack and try to pretend like things are the same as they were, I would suggest going slowly and exploring. Any questions on physical challenges before we move on? I'm going to just wait a second. Yeah?
We had someone that sent in that they were curious how to get that honest conversation started with a partner when you have scars or disfigurement potentially from surgeries, that prompting that conversation can be really difficult. If you have any thoughts about how to have that honesty and transparency with a partner.
And that's like in a dating scenario, maybe a new partner?
Doesn't say.
Yeah. So the question was about how to engage conversations, new conversations on perhaps scarring or changes to the body with a new partner, or just with a partner in general. I would say that almost always those are conversations that you want to start before you're in bed. Those are conversations that you have at a place and time in which you feel relaxed and safe. So it may be when you're cuddled up on the couch together, when you're at dinner in a private place. Luckily, there's a lot of privacy these days. People are keeping distance. But it's not a conversation that you have when you're already naked and in bed. It's a conversation that is started pretty much at any of those times that you would start other larger conversations within your relationship. And most of what I'm talking about is involving communication. I already said that a million times. But a high level of vulnerability. And so it may be expressing to a partner or a new partner, hey, this is new for me. Or if it's with an existing partner, hey, this is still new for me, this is new for us, and I'm not sure how this is going to go, or I'm anxious that my body is going to be different, because it likely is. And so I just ask that this time, maybe we just don't jump towards the finish line and go straight for penetration and the usual, that we spend some time to explore. If it's with a new partner, it may be giving them a heads up. Hey, I want to let you know I'm in remission and I have some scars in my body, and you can describe them and see if they have any questions about that. So then you're not having that conversation again in bed, and it's like, surprise, I have these scars, and then the mood just changes, and let's talk about that right now. You could have that conversation earlier, so then when it's time to be sexy and fun, you can be present and sexy and fun. And then, taking things slowly and exploring. And then that means, and this is not something that is taught in school, right? They teach sex therapy. They teach sex ed in school, but they don't teach anything about how to communicate your sexual needs in school. They teach about how reproduction works. And so your ability to communicate that feels good, that feels strange, that's a little too intense, or that's hurting, especially for women, can be very challenging to find that voice. But I really encourage you to do so. Any other questions, Jamie?
Yeah, we had someone that actually just pinged in. We had difficulty separating touch needed for medical purposes, drain clearing, and lymphatic massage, and touch needed for intimate purposes.
Yeah. So I was going to talk about this in the next slide, but this is a great opportunity for that. For those that are currently on the journey of navigating cancer, their bodies are touched a lot. They're poked and prodded by usually, hopefully, loving nurses and medical staff, but to meet a goal of attacking the cancer. And so while you may be touched all day, that's not intimate acts. And at the end of the day, you might not want to be touched at all. You might say, you know what, I want my autonomy back as a human. And I know that there are new mothers out there that also feel that way, that have wonderful children that they love to bond with. And then they're like, you know what, I don't want to share my body anymore. And so I really want to acknowledge and validate that there's a chance that if you have been touched all day, you want no more touches. To answer that specific question, I would say that if you're in a partnership, I would really encourage you to create a system within your relationship to signify different touch, right? And so it may be that you communicate to your partner when a good time is, or they ask you if it's a good time. So again, getting that consent and agreement that you are in favor of receiving any type of touch at that time. Acknowledging the fact that, yeah, you've been touched all day, but not in like a fun, sexy way. Okay, so we're gonna keep moving. Oh, okay, so this is just kind of silly. So it says, it's like you haven't heard a single thing I've thought. And I put this up there because, again, communication. One partner may not realize that the other partner is interested in sex because it's not on their mind at all. And so being able to communicate, hey, I'm still having sexual interests, even though maybe you're not right now. It also, people don't read minds. So if you are or are not, that might be something to communicate. Also, if you are worried about how your first sexual experience or the next sexual experience will be with a partner, you can't assume that your partner knows that. So again, you're going to have to communicate that openly with your partner. And for most people, again, having that conversation before you're already in bed as a way to get ready for that. Yeah, it comes down to how you feel and asking for what you want or what you don't want. Okay. So emotional and psychological challenges. We obviously, physical is going to be layered again with emotional and psychological challenges. And so there's going to be a lot of overlap from the last one. Body image challenges. Loss of hair, weight gain, weight loss, anything from the previous slide, and is going to affect the way that you think about your body. You may not think of yourself quite as much as a sexual being anymore. You might not think much of your body. You might be pretty pissed off at your body, in fact. And so acknowledging that you're having this complicated relationship with your body And at the same time, perhaps your partner's body is just the same. And so that could be interesting waters to navigate. And again, going back to this new normal, it's ultimately eventually going to be accepting, okay, this is where my body is. Connecting back to that loss, processing the loss of what was, and then eventually acknowledging what is now or what is currently now, which might not be forever, but maybe for a period of time. There's also a fear, and this goes into the body image, but it's a fear that you are no longer desired. So that's another layer of that body image. It's if you, for example, took such great pride in your breasts and your breasts are now gone, that affects not only the way that you feel about yourself, but projected out that other people will now no longer find you desirable. And these are great things to work through with through therapy. I know it's surprise, surprise, I suggest therapy, but it's a great place to work through these on your own and then to also consider those conversations with partners. Because chances are your partner still finds you incredibly attractive. And there's times when you may not look great. I recently I interviewed a friend in preparation for this just to run through some things, and he had a history of skin cancer, and he said, you know, Kris, I lost a lot of weight, and I looked like death, and I did not feel sexy at all. And it was the last thing on my list I was interested in. And I didn't miss it either because I was just dealing day to day. Going back to my initial statement, I want to acknowledge that that's okay. And that now he's in remission, and that's not the case. His body did change a little bit, and he's now established his new way of understanding his body. Again, going back to things that are not working the way that they used to. So you used to assume that when you did this, this happened. Well, now that happened, but the next step never happened. Or you are feeling aroused, you swear that you're feeling aroused, but you're experiencing vaginal dryness. You can't explain it. Yes, you are aroused. And so there's the surprise element, and then there's the perhaps anger or upset after that, or shame, or any of those emotions that can be tied into that experience. And acknowledging that and working through that things may not work the same way that you used to. And then this last one is a little bit more challenging. And I say this a little tongue-in-cheek. I said mortality isn't sexy. When you are grappling with what's going to happen with my cancer, am I going to be surviving this? For many people, that's not at all connected to sex and intimacy. For some folks, they can believe that if they get into a certain circumstance, they're going to start down that bucket list and they're going to do all the things that they wanted to do. And for many people, that's not the case. Their diagnosis leads to a depression that lasts for a long time. And considering your death or the death of your partner is generally not going to be something that puts you in the mood for sex. And so I just want to kind of put that out there and acknowledge that that's the case. Another thought regarding emotional or psychological challenges is that sex and intimacy can also be an incredibly normalizing experience. So when almost everything in your life seems to be different or not the same, and your world has been flipped around, your ability to be close with your partner whether that's the way that you used to have sex or lying together and holding each other, or closeness or other sexual acts together, can feel normal, can feel, man, this is hard, and we're in a partnership, and that connectedness can be rebuilt in a time of uncertainty. And so there is power in sex and intimacy. I'm using those as two different things because one is more specific and one is more general. It's a connective force of intimacy, but it can be a really powerful force to bring people back together as a unified partnership and team in a time that feels really disconnected and crazy. Okay, any questions that we haven't talked about regarding emotional, psychological challenges? Any questions?
One that a staff member mentioned comes
Sure.
up sometimes is that the difference in sex drive
Mhm.
and how to navigate when they're so vastly different to meet both
Yeah.
partners' needs.
Yeah, so, and we're actually jumping to the next slide, and that's a perfect place to start. Considerations for partners, right? It's not going to, it wouldn't be, it's very common that there's going to be different arousal, interests and arousals. And, my words are not working. That there's going to be difference in desires. And like I said, maybe it's the furthest from your mind, but it is not the furthest from your partner's mind. In fact, they were feeling totally understandable for like the first month and the second month, the third month, and now they're wondering when's that gonna happen. And so the first thing that I could say is patience, 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 because I'm gonna bet that your partner maybe is not thinking about it for themselves, but thinking about the fact that you might be thinking about it. And they might be feeling incredibly bad about that, and they're not sure what to do. Again, this is going to tie into communication and vulnerability and a little bit of risk, because the ability to share your experience, perhaps as the partner that is having a stronger desire, and to be able to hear that or to ask the questions of your partner for the person that is navigating cancer right now. So with that, what I might say is that that there are ways to be creative, and I'm gonna actually have that in a second. So another consideration is that there might be fear of hurting your partner or fear of asking too much. So your partner is navigating cancer. How selfish is it of me to ask them for sex? Like, that's too much. I can't do that. Or I'm afraid that if I do these things, I might hurt them. For a lot of this, it again goes back to communication and vulnerability. So if I were to talk to a partner, I might say, I know that you are going through this, but I'm really missing connecting with you, and I am having a strong desire, and I'm not sure what to do about that because I don't want to ask too much of you, and at the same time, like, I'm having that strong desire. And so that could be seen as a confrontation and met with defensiveness, or it could be met with an opportunity for creativity and navigating that. Because I would bet that you could find a solution together. I already talked about reconnecting and creating normalcy. I put up conversations on self-pleasuring because it was somewhat surprising for me, but for different folks have different opinions on self-pleasuring. And this is important to ask because when we're navigating, one partner has zero interest in sex, the other partner is super interested in feeling their normal arousals. How do you feel about your partner's self-pleasure? Is that something that is okay? Is that something that is not okay? Is that something that is okay as long as you don't hear about it or see it? Or is it something that you might be okay hearing, seeing about, witnessing, joining together? Maybe you don't want to fully engage, but you're okay lying with your partner while they self-pleasure themselves. These are all, I mean, there is a host of different combinations. It could be taking a shower with a partner. Maybe you might not be able to do penetrative sex, which is what you're accustomed to, but there's a lot of other ways to be intimate and sexual with partners. Again, I could open up that box of toys and we could find ways to spice things up. And because as a partner that might not be feeling intimate, they also still might want their partner to have those needs met because they love and care about their partner. They might feel bad that they aren't up for it, and that's a huge bummer because they used to love it. But you can work with your partner and get a little bit creative. So I want to put that out there. What else? Again, this is also a good opportunity to refer to a therapist. If couples, I've worked with couples where one partner has cancer and they their interest isn't really there, but they said, you know what, this is year like 2, and I want to meet my partner's needs, and let's get creative and navigate how to go about this so that their partner feels loved and connected with. They're both able to feel connected to each other, and their partner is able to have their releases and sexual experiences. I also put in birth control because depending on your treatment, if birth control is stopped for whatever reason, as the case with somebody I know, they said, oh, you probably won't be able to get pregnant, and then you do. And that could complicate things pretty majorly if you have an unplanned pregnancy. And so if you have to stop birth control for whatever treatments that you're on, just make sure that you are using other forms of protection to prevent anything that you don't want to have happen. And STIs, always. Any questions on this for partners? I know we talked about partners, but we didn't talk about dating too much. If anybody has questions on that. Not right now? Okay. Well, if you have any later, chime on in. Here's another comment. It says, sometimes, even if I stand in the middle of the room, no one acknowledges me. And sex and sometimes the lack of sex can be a giant elephant in a relationship. And it can be something that nobody wants to talk about because they don't see any options. They don't know what to do about it. They don't want to bring it up because it might be hurtful for their partner. And so they avoid it, even though it's sitting there. It's like an elephant is like sleeping in between you two in your bed. You don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. And I recognize that starting those conversations are very scary. But the option is to live with the elephant or to start a conversation that's highly vulnerable and completely new, but could lead to some new and creative solutions, because 2 is always better than 1. And so if you're able to creatively problem solve with your partner, you're going to have more success than silently walking around the dino. Okay, so I put this slide in here because there are opportunities. There is an opportunity to rediscover your body. For some of you, right now, it could be for the first time. Or it could be, again, with this body that has changed. Or a body that right now is in a very strange place and eventually may go back to another place that's maybe more similar to your previous body, but right now is in a very strange place, and it's completely foreign territory. And so the ability to rediscover is also an opportunity to learn new ways to experience pleasure. The traditional ways of experiencing pleasure may not work. And so being able to find ways that feel good and sexy and make you feel connected and loved, this is a great opportunity for that time. And again, you may not be up to it, and that might be furthest from your mind of things you want to do, but it may not be. And it may be that you want to connect with your partner, and your usual way is to have sex. But that's not going to happen right now. So how do you figure out how to connect with your partner where you feel that connection and they feel that connection, but without the normal way that you've been doing since probably the beginning of your relationship? Again, this is going to be opening up to the world of toys if toys have not been in your repertoire. This can be opening up to different types of touch, whether it's massage, whether it is sexual or non-sexual in nature, because maybe that part of your body is not something you want to go to right now, but you would be okay with your partner massaging your feet for 20 minutes or playing with your hair while you're falling asleep, because that feels really good. Whatever it is that you are able to find new tools in your kind of sexual toolbox that will allow you to connect with your partner. This is also an opportunity to increase and strengthen your communication. Again, highly vulnerable, highly scary sometimes, but if you are able to talk about these things, you're more likely to have your needs met and the needs of your partner met. And so please don't be afraid to talk about sex. And if you are, and if you need a third party, that's a great time to bring a therapist in and educate a little bit. We have a question, yeah.
This is actually for me.
Uh-huh.
How do you recommend people go about finding a therapist? Do they need to see a specialist, aka a sex therapist, or can they navigate that with any therapist? Or
Yeah.
how do you recommend?
Yeah, so in theory, I would say any therapist can talk about it. And I know the reality is that's not necessarily always the case. There are ways to search for people that, for example, I'm not going to specifically plug, but an example is Psychology Today. You could search by specialty. So you could search for sex therapy, and you could search for like couples therapists, for example. That's going to be your best bet is somebody who has experience talking about sex, because ideally all therapists feel comfortable talking about sex. And in my experience, I've met a number of therapists that are not super comfortable talking about sex. And so it might be something that you want to ask explicitly when you're having that initial phone call. Because if you say, we're having relationship challenges, that could mean so many different things. But if you're saying, we're having issues with intimacy and sex, then that's going to clue the therapist in. And you could ask the therapist, do you have experience working with couples with different arousals, or with those who are experiencing cancer? So having those questions is a great way to start. Yeah. Oh, we've got 10 more minutes or so? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I'm almost done with what I wanted to share with you. And so what I wanted to put up on the screen and allow you to read through are some follow-up books. So we have Reclaiming Sex and Intimacy After Prostate Cancer, Sex and Cancer, Intimacy, Romance, and Love After Diagnosis and Treatment. Dr. Katz's amazing Man, Cancer, Sex, and Women Cancer Sex, which I feel like are funny names. Also, Prostate Cancer and the Man You Love, Supporting and Caring for Your Partner. And Saving Your Sex Life, a guide for men with prostate cancer. And Return to Sex and Intimacy for Cancer Survivors and Their Partners. So this is, if you want to read a little more in depth, these are great options for reading. I'll leave that up for a moment longer in case anybody wants to check those out. Here are some other resources. There's the American Cancer Society Sexuality for Women with Cancer and the Good Look Feel Better program. And this is relating to beauty techniques to cope with treatment and side effects. NCI Self-Image and Sexuality, Sexuality and Fertility Problems, and Facing Forward Life After Cancer. These are some great tips on communication with your partners. Living Beyond Breast Cancer, Sex and Intimacy After Breast Cancer Diagnosis, and Female Sexual Health After Cancer through Livestrong.org. So that's all that I brought to share with you today, and so I wanted to open up to any remaining questions that you have. The questions that I might ask you that I would love to hear if you would like to share are, what did you find most useful or most interesting about what I shared? And that did anything I discussed today shift things around a little bit for you? So I'm just going to wait and see if there's any questions. Take time for that. I have my contact information here. If you have any questions, you're welcome to contact me.
Will you tell us a little bit about your practice, like where it is and about what you do?
Yeah. So my practice is located in downtown or near downtown San Luis Obispo. And I work with couples, teens and adults and elder adults. And like I said at the beginning, my background is supporting survivors of sexual assault, intimate partner violence, and sex therapy. But I also work with couples on communication and relationship challenges, and really the whole gamut. Yeah.
How does trauma come into all of this as well? I was thinking about
Trauma,
it can bring things up. Or
yes.
Yeah.
Trauma, again, similar to loss, can be another layer to all of this. Trauma lives in your body, right? And so it affects the way that you view your body, and your relationship with your body, and potentially parts of your body, depending on what your traumas are. And so that can be another lens that can influence and change the way that you feel about your body. So it's certainly related.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Nothing specific, but
Okay.
something that I know comes up in groups sometimes, and get some laughs sometimes, is the creativity of what people use for lubricant. Do you have any favorites or anything that, I know you probably need to check with your doctor if you have certain medications?
Definitely check with your doctor, and then make sure that you're using, so for example, like depending on the types of toys you're using and the types of lube, for example, if you are using, you don't want to use oil lubes with oil toys, essentially, because that makes things break down. So you want to use water-based lubricants predominantly. There are some lubricants out there specifically for vaginal dryness. I don't know them off the top of my head, but that would be a good question for a doctor, and for your doctor, and if your doctor doesn't specialize in that, with an OBGYN or a family planning doctor to get that. Or the internet often has a lot of those. Make sure it's a reputable site, but looking into what lubricants are best for that. Anything else? Often things that have, my kind of general rule is if you wouldn't kind of eat it, you might not want to put it in your vagina or in your anus or in your body in general. And so sometimes a lot of the flavored stuff are not quite as healthy, and something that is like pure and organic and doesn't have any sugar or additives, because sugar can affect the pH of your vagina, which has a very specific pH that does not like to be messed with. It's self-cleaning, so it doesn't like it when you mess with its system.
Thank you. Everybody's being shy. So
That's
there's
okay.
nothing specific, but it doesn't mean that we don't have interest. We've had lots of people following along throughout.
Awesome.
And yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Jamie. I'm excited to be
you.
here and talk about this. And if anybody has any questions, they can. My website has my email on it, and I have my phone number, which you can give me a call and feel free to answer questions.
And as always, you can contact us here at Cancer Support Community for support, either one-on-one with free counseling or groups. This is something that comes up in our group discussions. We like to make space for it, and so I think Kris has really introduced a lot of great things that are going to kick off hopefully some good, juicy conversations.
Ooh, juicy conversations. I'm a fan of.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.